All right, Shalom. First off, I want to start up by saying all praises, honor, and glory is due to Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem Karkadash. Just all praises to the world-caused God, whose true name in the Hebrew is Yahweh, by Hashem, meaning in the name, Yahushai, being the name of the only begotten Son. Also want to say double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and mercy to the hopeful elect, preaching his word in truth and sincerity. I'm the brother Tazabah in the Great Millstone, Arizona camp, Lord will, with another video to edify and I wanted to go on a few videos, man, a few news updates as far as prophecy goes. It's going to be a lot of information, right? See what the scriptures that'll come up. Obviously, Ezekiel the 38th chapter is going to come into play here. And there's a lot to go into. So we'll get into this, man. Because right now what you're seeing is Ezekiel 38 chapter, and several portions of it is coming to pass. Right? So I want to hit on those. So the first portion I wanted to hit was this part of this video.
Poland. Oh,
rest of Europe, right? So there is an agenda. It has nothing to do with anyone living on the European continent. Go ahead, David. I'm
well,
sorry.
and I just checked my watch, my history watch, and it shows that there's only been one country that's ever actually used nuclear weapons. And you know who that was? Poland.
Us. Oh, us?
You did that, David.
Us.
Don't
You
do
did
that
that?
anymore. You just pointed to yourself.
Sorry.
Eritrea? Eritrea? So, yeah, we're getting dangerously close to this. And you have to think, well, no, they would never do this. But if you really if you lay it out, and this is exactly what Dmitry Medvedev just said this morning, former Russian president Dmitry Medvedev has warned that there is simply no other way out. There he is with Putin. And he threatened a nuclear response by Russia. If you, basically what he's saying is, if NATO continues to do this, and if NATO tries to have a victory, like a Ukrainian victory, which would mean attacks on Moscow and taking over Crimea and taking all of this land back, that's a non-starter. That means that a nuclear response would be the response. That's what Medvedev is saying. There's no other way out, he says. Do you know what they're playing with here?
See? And this is where we're at in prophecy. So this is Ezekiel the 38th chapter, right? And I started too. It says, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. Right? It says, and prophesy against it and say, thus say Yahweh power, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, talking about Russia, right? And I will turn thee back and put hooks in thy jaw, and I will bring thee forth, right? That's what's happening. The Lord is turning Russia back. And the hooks that are being placed in the jaw is all this intervention, all this NATO approachment on their sovereignty, all the military aid they're giving into Ukraine, which is really just supposed to be a part of Russia in the first place. Right? So the hooks are being fully set. And what is it causing them to do? It's causing them to really consider throwing blows in the form of nuclear missiles, and this is all going into prophecy, right? This is all going into prophecy. And back in Ezekiel 38:4, it says, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth in all thine armies, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with buckler and shield, all of them handling sword. Now, I'm going to play a little more and
They're
peep what
playing
it
with
says.
here? The attacks are relentless, by the way. Over the past 24 hours, dozens upon dozens of increased drone attacks inside of Russia. Here's just some remnants of these apartment complexes
That have been happening for weeks. So imagine the U.S. response if this had been hitting buildings in Manhattan constantly, right?
Oh, yeah.
And this has been happening not just for days, but for weeks. What would the United States have been doing at this point? You can only imagine, right? If they were coming from outside of the country and we knew it from, say, Canada or Mexico or anywhere in the Caribbean, we would have done something by now. And so we are dangerously close to a response that does not involve just hitting Ukrainian infrastructure.
Friend of the show, Douglas McGregor, says Putin will not stand by as this happens, and now NATO is actively discussing war with Russia. Watch.
Come on now. Goddamn commercials, bro.
The second part, though, is very, very important. And that is that the members are now supposedly openly discussing war plans against Russia. Now, this kind of thing is extremely sensitive, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
You can imagine the impact on Moscow. Thus far, Putin has held 300,000 troops in reserve, hoping that he doesn't have to commit them because he's always worried about NATO intervention.
You see, that's what it said right there. It says, "I'll bring thee forth and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with buckler and shield, all of them handling swords." And that's what's happening. He's rousing them up. They're talking about their reserves that they're going to activate pretty soon because they keep doing all these hit jobs in Russia, on Russia infrastructure, right, with U.S. drones. It's really U.S. drones. When they supplied it to Ukraine, it's U.S. drones. You think Ukraine, they had like next to no real military, and out of nowhere they're able to go months, and even it's been what, this has been going on for a little over a year, right? Probably like a year and a half. You think they're able to go a year and a half with Russia toe to toe without some intervention? I mean, somebody's jumping in a fight. So things are getting steamy in prophecy, right? That's why the Lord said, what, Habakkuk? Let's get that. Habakkuk 2 and 3, it says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry." Right? You're seeing things starting to speed up as far as prophecy goes. Now, other thing to take a note of with this and going into Ezekiel 38, right? You had
Breaking overnight, a U.S. defense official tells
this situation, right?
NBC News that a Russian fighter jet damaged a U.S. drone over Syria. The official says the Russian jet flew dangerously close, then deployed its flares directly at the U.S. aircraft, damaging its propeller. The drone did not crash, but was forced to land. The incident comes about 2 weeks after Russian fighter jets flew too close to several U.S. drones over Syria, setting off flares and forcing the aircraft to take evasive maneuvers. The U.S. military is expected to release a statement on the latest incident.
No, they did that flyover. But at the same time, right? At the same time, it says Russian S-35 jet fighter. So let me read that again. I don't want to. It says Russian Su-35 fighter aircraft closes in on U.S. MQ-9 aircraft on July 5th over Syria, right? Now, mind you, they actually did shoot down a couple of them. And where is it at? I had a video somewhere on here, man. Because what was happening is Syria is an ally to Russia. And now the world's seeing the fact that Russia actively jumped in the mix, right? At the same time where the U.S. was preparing to start bombing the hell out of Syria. And that's why that drone got hit. And the world is seeing that on a world stage. So what is that causing the nations to do? It's causing them to be emboldened. I did a video yesterday. I'm going to try to find the video that I watched, that I used in it. But you had, I believe it was Nigeria. One of the officials from Nigeria sit there and say the U.S. has used all its power to just basically beat everybody up. And why are they getting so bold? Because now they're looking at it and like, hey, there's an alternative to that American source of just brutality. Let me find that video. Here it is.
Blame him. President Afwerki later,
Continue indefinitely.
before the summit even got, was the Eritrean president Isaias Afwerki and what he had to say.
They are printing money. They are not manufacturing anything at all. It's printing money. This has been one of their weapons globally. The monetary system, the global monetary system, controlled by dollar and euro, has been used. Sanctions here, sanctions there, sanctions there, grabbing this account, grabbing that account, has been one of their tools. This is not going to continue indefinitely. And we need a new financial architecture globally, not controlled by euro, not controlled by the dollar, not controlled by other currencies.
So basically, he's calling for a new financial architect. Lateral occurrence, folks. Hope all is well. He'll summit every second rate of act on that region, which have no clue, on average, as to what's really going on. So there were talks and meetings at the summit to boost Russian partnerships in Africa, but the media continues to downplay Putin's impact on that region, making it seem like he's alone and isolated. Complete nonsense. The mainstream media will have you thinking that Africa. Now, the big headline was how? By Sea Grain deal. But don't worry. Putin made it clear that he has Africa's back. On the very first day of the summit, he promised the African heads of state that he'll make sure that they won't go hungry. Back to Africa. But hold on. The juice.
See, all this is building up, right? You have all the nations, and the nations are looking at how Russia responding in Syria. Now they're saying, you know what? Hey, there's another big dog in the play. We don't have to deal with the U.S. Right? You even had Russia sit there and say Russia forgive $23 billion of African debt, so-called African debt, because they're really Hamites, and there's some Israelite nations over there, right? But they forgave $23 billion of debt, basically giving them the ability to breathe so that they can build up their own stuff, right? So all these nations are looking at that and what they're doing and how they're protecting those in Syria, and they're saying, you know what, we gonna rock with Russia. You even had right here in this video,
Russia doesn't exert influence so much as offers cooperation and partnership as investment, and we've seen that evidenced by Putin forgiving $23 billion of debt. I've never heard of such an action taken by the IMF, by the West, in my lifetime, for sure. Now, I could be wrong, of course, but this was pretty monumental and made the headlines most certainly in Russian media. I'm not sure how much the West picked up on that.
you see,
I didn't see those
and
headlines
that's big
in
things.
any
Now
Western
they were
press
actually
that Russia
rooting
forgives
on.
the debt
Yeah, people
of
over there
certain
in
African
I believe it
nations,
was in Uganda
and the billions that they've done. You
or
bring up a great
Nigeria,
point about the
because they were going
IMF.
to cut them out of the grain deal, right? Waving around Russian flags because they see that Russia is actually giving them a fucking chance. Which Russia is a bunch of Edomites too, so it doesn't really matter. But this is all moving towards prophecy happen. This is Ezekiel 38:5. It says Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them all, right? So you went into the Iranians, you went into Hamite nations, right? With shield and helmet, Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togomar of the north quarters, right? So they're literally feeding these nations, giving them the ability to arm themselves and pulling in a whole new system. It says, and all his bands with many people, and many people with thee, right? Those many people are coming with him. It says, be thou prepared, prepare for thyself, and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. And that's what's happening, right? They're staving off starvation for some of these. Their plans to stave off starvation for some of these companies, pull them out of the U.S. debt cycle, right? All of them are ditching the U.S. dollar. All right, Ezekiel 38 is coming into play heavy, and more nations are looking at this and like, yo, we can work with Russia, right? Right here, look at this. Come on now. Don't do that bullshit. And here we go. He's all on this shit again. But in this video, it's showing you how the Nigerians are actually benefiting from Russia so much. So these other countries are seeing what Russia's doing, and they're like, you know what? They got the military might to make the U.S. think twice. They have a coalition of nations coming into this whole new system, and they're forgiving mass loads of debt. The world is basically looking at Russia like, yo, this nigga can deal honestly in a certain way. So what it's gonna cause Russia to be emboldened because he's gonna have more allies to call on, and it's gonna cause these weaker nations, right? It's gonna cause the weak nations to say they're strong, right? This is all prophecy. It's all prophecy. Ezekiel 38. And you know what? That's it on that. I didn't want to make this too long, though. I really wanted to go into all this information, but there's a lot of aspects of that Ezekiel the 38th chapter happening. World War III getting geared up. Russia, the hooks going into their jaws. Right? Remember, the scriptures talk about an evil thought. Let's get that. Let me get that. I'll close out with that one. Ezekiel 38:10, it says, "Thus said Yahweh, power, it shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought, and thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages." And in that first video I was going into, they were talking about what if this happened in the U.S., right? They would expect the U.S. to go to another country and start fighting whoever's coming into theirs and blowing things up. Well, that's going to start coming into the Russia's minds, right? And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages, which is America, right? I will go to them that are at ease, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls, having neither bars nor gates, right? To take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thy hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nations, which have gotten cattle and goods, that dwell in the midst of the land. Right? So this is the time that's getting geared up, and it's only a matter of time till this stuff starts intensifying. So Lord will, this stuff speeds up. Right? Lord willing, this is edifying. I'm going to say, call Allah, Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, Bashim Karkadash. Call halal Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai. Shalom.